Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and website can be found at lifecoachdanamslike.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our third episode of season 21, a very special guest, author and fellow podcast all the way from Italy, Federica Bressan. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Federica, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Introducing myself is not necessarily an easy task. I'm in my early 40s now, and I have had a few careers. I have a few careers behind my back, so I can tell you I've been a musician first, and then I was lucky enough to embark on a career in academia as a researcher for over a decade. I've worked as a journalist, and indeed, I'm an author because I published a novel last year, also in English and Dutch besides Italian. And I am a podcaster, a number of other things. But because we are here today, because of the topic, because of your podcast, I actually would like to introduce myself, if this makes sense, as someone who is embarked on a path of self-growth, full-time and intentionally, since COVID, basically, when my life changed like that of many others. If this were a job, which is not, I would say I'm someone fully invested in self-growth.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. So tell us a little bit more, first of all, what is the title of your book? What prompted you to write this book? Was it written during the COVID? And was it about self-growth? So just explain that a little bit more to our listeners.
Thank you for asking that, because it's not a book of self-growth, but indeed, the main character, who is a young woman who always talks in first person, as she goes through the adventures and whatever happens in the book, asks herself what are existential questions, and is interested in how to live better, how to navigate through this world. So it's very much a book that I have always refrained from calling like a love story, although there's friendship, there's love in the book. It's also very much existential. It was written in late 2021, January 2022, published in July 2022. And it reflects in part personal experiences, is by no means a journal. I would have published as such, as an autobiography. It's just inspired by personal experiences that have been part of my journey of self-growth nonetheless. So the book, well, for short, like more concretely, the book is about a young woman who moves who settles in a area of Italy just outside of Rome, between Rome and Tuscany, called Tuscia. The name of the book is In the Heart of Tuscia, Tuscia being the name of this area, here spelled Tuscia. And as she learns to know the territory and the beautiful places, because it is a wonderful place, she does so in the company of this man who she meets, and that helps her kind of come out of her shell. She was probably a bit blocked in her life, and so they become friends, they grow closer, there is some romance, but we always just hear her voice, and it's always like she's reflecting upon things, she's telling the story that's just happened in the past, and she goes in and out of her memories. So she uses the past tense and the present tense. So bottom line, it's a journey, inner and outer, in the land of Tuscia, and all the way to the bottom of the heart of this woman.
So wow, that's interesting. So that prompted you to write this type of book as a narrative, kind of like you explain a story from a third eye perspective at the same time, or is it you, the narrative, explaining the story of that girl?
Well, I came to believe that every author just has their own style and their own talent. I'm not someone who easily writes like science fiction or comes up with whole worlds. There are some people who do that. I'm so impressed.
Yes.
My thing is what has always come easy to me or natural is this first person perspective. So that means that I can put myself in the shoes of a nun or of a prostitute,
Okay.
but I will always have the first person perspective. It's a limit, but it's a talent. It is what it is, right?
That's true.
And so that is the voice speaking. So that's why it's so easy to imagine that there's a huge overlap with me because I'm a woman and I moved to the land of Tuscia, and fair enough. But again, it's a story. That's what it is. Even to call it novel is too much. Novel for me is Madame Bovary or Crime and Punishment, the serious stuff. It's actually even a light read. It's a thin book. So to me, this is a modern day story, indeed written in the first person.
So how much of that book is your own personal story? If let's say we would say in 100% mark, would you say it's 50% your story and 50% was more fiction? Or was it just basically integrating what you experienced, but not exactly what you went through that you put into that story?
Yeah, for over a year, I resisted answering this question honestly because it was just too difficult. I wanted to distance myself from the book. But the truth is actually in the words of Laura Ingalls, the author of Little House in the Prairie, the whole series of children books.
Absolutely.
When asked if what she wrote in the books was real or not, because some people were using them as a basis for studies on how pioneers used to live, etc., she said, it's all true. So the answer to your question would be 100%, but it's not the whole truth.
Okay.
There's more. The answer to then how I decided what to omit is difficult because actually it was very natural to it's basically probably like the personal the elaboration that you have out of an experience. So actually, even if you've been married for 40 years with someone and you ask the people separately, tell me the story of your marriage, you would get two different stories, wouldn't you?
I agree. I agree 100%.
And so one thing is the facts and what happened. And one thing is how I told the story, which is very much how it was at that moment in time, which is, by the way, no longer true because artists do outgrow their work, how it was resonating inside of me, what I was feeling then, how I was seeing things then. And so the omissions were not very cerebral. I say, oh, I shouldn't say this. This is too personal. Absolutely not. In fact, rereading the book, which was not written for publication, I gave it out to 40, 50 friends in Italian and in English. And many of them were like, why don't you publish this? Why don't you publish this? And I, oh, come on, you know. But then it went, long story short, I got 4 publishers to want to publish it. So I had the luxury of the choice of the publisher, and I did. I'm very happy with Sette Città, based in Viterbo here, a city nearby. Just signed a deal with a Dutch publisher for the republication of the book in the Netherlands with Bookscout. And so this is how it became public, and it's very authentic. And after I knew that it was going to be published, which of course made me proud, I thought, gee, but I've been so candid. And then again, I thought, well, that's the courage of the writer. And I read quotes by other writers that say the same. And now that I am in the shoes of the one who exposed herself, you can do it putting your words in a character's mouth, but whatever you write, people will think it came out of your head. So
Of course,
if you write like a detective story with people murdering someone, that came out of your head. You must think those things, right? So everything points at you. You're guilty. And it gave me goosebumps for a second. I thought, Jesus, that people are going to know me so well, for example, which is not even necessarily so, because it's not things are not over explained in the book. I hint to things, I talk about things. If you want to pick them up, you do. If they resonate with you, probably you pick them up, otherwise not. Again, it's a very light read. And there's, so I thought this is what I say. You have to have the courage to put yourself out there. So there's much truth. But again, I would say it's fair enough if you think you know me or know something about me, know me better, know something intimate about me without knowing me at all, probably in real life, if you read the book, but never assume that you know all of me.
Yeah, definitely. But do you think that this moment of self-growth was more about you writing this book than you having the courage to be able to express yourself in that book?
The book is a big thing that's happened to me in the past years, but it's only one chapter, if you want, like a book is a chapter of my journey, definitely.
So now let's go back into the self-worth part. I mean, I know a lot of people, or not self-worth, but self-growth. A lot of people are too afraid to take a step forward to be able to do something out of their comfort zone. So when we look at happiness in a grand scheme of things, what did that change your level of happiness by getting validation from others that your book is worthy enough to get published? Or did you just write it without even having the intention to get that book up in the open and having it published all over the world?
Wow, if I take your question apart, I will be so boring. But you use the word happiness, which is so loaded, and you assume that happiness has ever been my goal in life. Says who? You know, a bunch of things. Let's say that uh, to be an author is something I have always wished. It was my first wish. In fact, before I learned how to write, when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I tried to write my first novel, like serious novel, when I was 6 in elementary school. I didn't finish it, of course, but I still have this vivid memory of why it didn't work out and of the commitment I had. So then I've done a bunch of other things in life, but here I was with a text that I wrote. I've always written much in my life, but I had never published fiction. As an academic researcher, you can just imagine like 50 academic papers as first author, many. I write, I use the pen, but this was a story. This was different. And when I learned that it would be published, I felt an immense sense of pride. I'm still proud of it. Then I'm, on my journey. I'm working on not minimizing every achievement, imposter syndrome, because yeah, anybody could have done it. Yeah, many people have a book, of course, now. Yeah, of course. Like I found even a foreign publisher to want to republish my book set in Italy now. But of course, I mean, it's because I looked for it. If I looked for a publisher in the United States, I would find it. Anybody could do that. This super minimizing your achievements. I have that. I am proud. Of course, I'm proud. Um, um, but it's not something very central now to my journey, to my goals. It's something beautiful that's happened, of course, maybe more important than I realize. But I am I think I'm someone who's been through long periods in her life where she was just restless, and all you want is that restlessness to go away. Happiness seems out of hand. It's like, oh, I could do with just peace for
Mhm.
a while. And this is what motivates you to work on yourself, to keep asking the questions. And honestly, I love to share these things because I'm sure you're never the only one doing anything in this world. So someone out there resonates. At the same time, whatever I go through, I never assume that I can speak to a fellow human and assume he gets it, understands it, or resonates, because everybody goes through their own journey. I see life as, the Wizard of Oz. When you get into the last chamber, everybody sees a bloody different thing, can be very different. So I never assume anything of someone else's path.
Mhm.
What I can tell you is that I do not comprehend how certain people will choose not to embark in change. It's scary and whatever it takes, but the way you are now should hurt enough and just have you so dissatisfied that change is almost inevitable, because anything would be better than this. So I'm someone who has never struggled to get outside her comfort zone. It's what I do.
Mhm. So, okay, so if happiness, Federica, is subjective, then people have that main goal to be able to reach whatever happiness means to them, either writing a book or accomplishing certain tasks that they never imagined to accomplish. So you mentioned earlier, before we spoke, or when we spoke originally, like over by phone, you said that happiness is basically a combination of healthy relationship, understanding the state of world affair, and especially the understanding ourselves, because many people don't know what they really want, and they don't really know what will make them happy. So, what would you say based on what I just mentioned? Is it like a made like is it a grand picture, let's say a full puzzle versus little pieces of puzzle that you have to bring together to make the grand image?
I love that you remember our phone call. I took notes and I've kept them. This was months ago,
Yeah.
actually. My own life has changed so much in these months, but I still have my notes here just in front of me because I had given some thought what I can come and tell on this podcast that would be meaningful. And I remember approaching the concept of happiness from two viewpoints. And precisely, one is the subjective, because you want to be happy. I mean, happiness, it's a loaded word on all you want, but we kind of all understand it. Of course, we know what it means to be happy and we strive for that. So there is personal happiness, your achievement, your realization, feeling good, doing the stuff you like, of course. And you have to know yourself. There's a personal happiness, but then the second point, which is integral, in fact, to the first one, is that I believe happiness is something also as something of a distributed concept, because you cannot be happy by yourself, can you?
No.
Wouldn't it be odd to say, I'm so happy, and everybody around you is not, or your environment is broken somehow? So, this is why I say I can call myself happy, or in reverse, the type of happy that I should pursue is something that already in my initial vision will include the people around me, my environment, my house, my work, all of these things, because the total sum of all of this will be able to say, I am happy. Does this make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, it's more like combining healthy relationship, making sure that people around you are happy as well, that will resonate, that will project back into your own internal happiness. So I think it's kind of like playing ping pong or tennis. You hit the ball and you expect the ball to get hit back to us.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Um, there's so much to say. What I want to say, I think that I believe that if you do what's expedient, if you're selfish and you trick others in doing something you think is good for you, for example, cheating and that kind of things, or your business partner, that I mean, I believe that no matter if in the short term you can say how smart I am, hey, how cool I am, I don't believe you're truly happy. You can't be. People who hurt people are not happy. When you see someone intentionally, and even not so much intentionally, clumsily, out of ignorance, out of being underdeveloped, hurt other people, disrespect other people, they don't have happiness inside of them. In fact, I believe, regardless of whether you see it as a subjective thing or a collective thing, that the best indicator of someone's happiness, state of joy inside and contentment, is how generous they are with others, how kind they are with others. And if they wake up rested and in a good mood, but it's just how they are kind to others. That's, in fact, the indicator and the measure of their own happiness.
But do you think in our society nowadays, Federica, with social media and everything that revolves around it, when people have the tendency to be able to compare themselves with others that have maybe a more, I would say, lavish life, or they have accomplished a lot more than what we could ever dream of, do you think that helps them achieve happiness when there's a constant level of, I would say, comparison with others, when we both know that social media is completely fake anyway, but people have the tendency to believe too much on what's not real, because it's like living your life in the matrix. Inside the
Mm.
matrix, you're being connected. People would prefer taking the blue pill than the red pill. So all this, do you think it facilitates people from achieving happiness?
Well, first of all, one of my favorite memes on the internet is the one when Morpheus offers the two pills
Yes.
and then the hands are empty and he says, "Did you just take both?"
You want the best of both worlds, right? As they say.
I always like to see things from, that unexpected perspective. And that's why oftentimes, I seem to dodge the question because I will undermine the terms of the question and this can make me look smart sometimes, or just what is she talking about? So in response to your question, which is always just so complex and has it roots into our society and the dynamics, and then what kind of demographics are we talking about, and is it the United States, Europe, are we talking South Africa, very, very different places. In general, I would say that every era in history has had its own deceptions, and this is just what we're living now. I believe that if you if you want to live intentionally with your eyes open, you can always do so in every era. Actually, now we are subject to this very powerful distorting tools like social media, Instagram, and how fast things go and all you want, but we are also exposed to so much information. It's very, we normally go to school, so we are kind of familiar with the fact that Greek philosophy existed, and we have access to sources of alternative wisdom, or wisdom, but alternative because Plato is not really our contemporary. I am studying philosopher, psychoanalyst Adolf Adler a lot lately, and I find great solace, support, tools, right? So I don't know. I believe that only dead fish go with the flow. And if you're so much subject of social media and the narratives within social media,
Leave.
yeah. I mean, you can wake up anytime, blue pill, red pill, or take both and see what happens.
That's a good point. I mean, the irony of taking both, does it show someone that they really want to experience the two side of the spectrum, which is being dormant with their head inside the sand as taking the blue pill, or really wanting to wake up and understanding what the matrix is all about and why do we live in a life of illusion?
Well, what I like about the option of did you just take both is that because of, well, it's a vicious circle, but because of how we design technology and now for how technology is designed, and so it reinforces, we live in a procedural reality. There is a how-to for everything. You have options, drop-down menus, click here. And I believe that there's lateral thinking and just seeing things from the perspective that is not available in the drop-down menu is something that we're not so that we're not practicing that anymore, which is the genius view on things. It's that different take on things, the twist. So you see, what is the option there? Blue pill, red pill, A or B. So to say, did you just take both already like breaks the rules of the game that I presented you. I think that's brilliant, and that it's always been a prerogative of humans to be genius like that. They have these flashes of genius. I'm not sure about artificial intelligence now. I wish that we humans like hold on to that. And yeah, I'm big, I'm also a tech fanatic, tech opinionist, and I'm always super critical of interfaces and system design, because there's always an ideology embedded in a system and a prioristical idea of user embedded in how you design the interface. And this is like a ready-made jail. Sometimes it's wonderful and comfortable, but it wasn't something that came out of nature. Someone designed it. If you're not critical of the design, and probably this can be extended to actually society, how laws work and how social systems work. If you're not critical of the design, because those things arose from somewhere, they're not like a flower in nature, then you will just assume this is just what it is, and you will be a slave of those who designed the system and hide behind the objectivity of, oh, it just happened. If this makes sense, if I explain myself.
It does make sense. And that actually kind of remind me of a few Hollywood movies that when you look at the Terminator movie series, and when you see how the machine took over because they were not contained properly, then what happened with, like August 17th, 1997, whatever it is, which was like the end, and every machine were sending the bombs to each other. Do you think that AI, if it's not properly contained, we may lose track, we may lose opportunity to be able to control it?
Nah, I don't believe that. I'm one of those who don't believe machines will take over, ever.
Haven't not they?
Evil people may instrumentalize certain systems, and like a calculator does things better than a human. It's a tool. A computer has certain computation power that exceeds that of the human brain, but it doesn't think for itself. It doesn't have goals, emotions. So ill-intended or good-intended human being that knows how to instrumentalize advanced technology will be very powerful, but I will never believe that machines take over. It's humans behind it.
But yeah, but machine by itself learns as well. A program is made to be able to be adapted to its environment, and it knows that, okay, if this is a way of thinking, if I elaborate on in this method of thinking, then I can actually come up with new theories, and that can actually be programmed to a point where the machine will be self-sufficient.
Oh, look, it's a plausible or possible or not impossible scenario. And that's why there is that line of science fiction. You can imagine such future. It's possible. And it's intriguing. And this is the job of science fiction, to explore plausible scenarios, right? I don't believe it will happen in reality, but it's even fascinating, I mean, it's fascinating, but I don't believe it will happen. That's my point.
So if we go back to your book, I mean, before we conclude this podcast, Federica, where can people find your book? Where is it available? Because you mentioned about it being published in Europe. So can they find it here in the US, or is it distributed here in the United States?
They can, because it's also available as an ebook, and it's on Amazon. I hope you will put links actually in the description of this podcast somewhere, because unfortunately my name is foreign and the title of the book has TOO-SHAH in it, so it's a nightmare to spell. But if you Google basically my name, Federica Bressan, in the heart of TOO-SHAH, you will find several websites that sell the book. It's true, shipping the hard copy to the United States is a bit difficult now, but it's doable. Just reach out to me. Probably that's the best way. Otherwise, the ebook is available. It's also quite cheap. I think, $2.99, $3.99, with color pictures in it. So you see what TOO-SHAH looks like. It's very nice. And otherwise, I have a website as a researcher, as a podcaster, as a science communicator. So I always say, Google me, which is not very sexy to say. It's like, but if you Google me, you will see a bunch of websites come up, including that of the book, In the Heart of TOO-SHAH.
And what is the name of your podcast, Federica?
It's technoculture.
Technoculture, okay.
Technoculture. But I also have a YouTube channel, easy to find. It goes by my name. And I have other interviews there on science communication. Some are in Italian, but most are in English, about cybersecurity and the metaverse, that are not part of technoculture, which has its own website.
Beautiful. Well, Federica, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible story. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 21 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Our happiness is intricately tied to the fabric of society, the depth of our relationship, and the state of our world's affair. In the embrace of supportive community, we find solace and joy, knowing we're not alone in our journey. Our relationship, built on love and understanding, anchor us in moments of both triumph and tribulations. Moreover, our happiness is intertwined with global issues. By collectively addressing challenges, we pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Let's nurture compassion, strengthen bond, and strive for positive changes. For it unified lies the key to enduring happiness and a better world for all. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.